sure at some point or another, you've all felt like you don't belong. Maybe it was at school, maybe in a meeting, or maybe you've simply walked into a room and not known why you were there. Maybe there's a reason, maybe you don't know why. But imagine feeling like that all the time, in everything you do, for as far back as you can remember. Like you don't fit in, like there's something different about you, but you don't know what it is. And it feels like nobody understands, nobody gets it, nobody quite gets how you're feeling. It's as if everybody knows something that you don't. Like when people were born, they were given a manual, except you were given a different one. Yours has pages missing. Maybe it's written in a different language. Sometimes you turn the page and all of them are blank. Other people seem to know how to act, how to communicate, how to be, but you're just not sure. All the parts of you are there in front of you, but you're missing your instructions. You don't know how to fit yourself together, and as such, you don't know where you fit. So, you go on other people. You look around you and you copy what other people do, because that will make you fit if they fit. But the problem with that is other people contradict each other. And the world is full of contradicting rules and advice. Like too much confidence makes you seem full of yourself, but too little confidence will make you nervous. Now, I seem pretty confident standing up here, but that's not always been the case. When I was at nursery, my parents had to warn the staff that they had to gain my trust. Approach slowly, not make any sudden movements, and don't turn on the Hoover. And if all else fails, lure me in with a snack and a book. Sounds a bit like they were describing a cat rather than a child, but my cat-like aloofness carried on throughout much of my teenage years. My school reports highlighted that I lacked confidence in pretty much every aspect. Academics, socially, there just seemed to be nothing there. But whenever I tried to show more confidence, putting my hand up in class, asking teachers questions, I was called a teacher's pet and I was bullied. You should enjoy your own company, but be social. Now, I'm really good at making friends. I can do that in a heartbeat, but I'm not very good at keeping them. I just can't maintain those relationships. I had one friend consistently throughout my childhood, and she was my friend simply because we liked the same stuff. We liked space, we liked sitting in the dark pretending to be astronauts, and we liked Doctor Who. But we also liked sitting in silence, no conversation necessary, happy to just exist in each other's company. And that was my idea of the best kind of friend. Because I liked to be alone. I didn't like being surrounded by lots of people. Because when you're alone, there's no expectations. You can't be too much and you can't be too little. You can only be yourself. You don't want to be too quiet, but you don't want to be too loud either. Now, I've always been described as quiet. It was the #1 word used in my school reports. Katie is quiet. She's a quiet member of the form. It would be better if she put her hand up more, contribute more. But I was that kid that other children got moved next to because I was the biggest conversation killer. I wouldn't talk to anyone, so it meant they had to get on with their work, which made my nickname in English of Chuckles quite ironic, given that I definitely didn't chuckle. The one thing I was never quiet about was music, because I didn't necessarily need words to be able to express how I was feeling. The only time I did need words was probably my proudest moment when I convinced my school to start a folk band because I voiced my opinion that I couldn't join an orchestra with an accordion. You should have a routine, but be flexible. I presume most of you looked forward to school holidays. I mean, what I wouldn't give for 6 weeks off right now. But I, on the other hand, didn't like not having that routine. I needed the routine of school to be able to function. What was I supposed to do if I had to fill 6 weeks of time? Do I read a book? Should I play a game? Do I just sit there and wait for school to start again? But you should be able to change your routine at the drop of a hat, because things change, things happen, and you shouldn't let it affect you too much either. But while my friends were looking at universities all over the country, I was looking exclusively within a 20-mile radius of home, because I couldn't bear the thought of changing the routine that I'd become so accustomed to. You should follow the rules, but other people might not. There's no grey here. It's black and it's white, it's right versus wrong. Do your homework, don't talk back, be polite. You can't sort of follow the rules. You either do or you don't. And you shouldn't point out if people aren't following the rules, because then you're a snitch. But if you follow the rules too much, then you're too good. Now, my sense of justice has always been equitable to that of Sherlock Holmes. So much so that I caused my parents great distress when I didn't inform them that I'd had a worm put on my head in the playground in year 4, until my teacher called them to tell them of my trauma, to which I replied, he had to miss playtime, so he was punished, it's fine. Show your emotions, but don't show all of them, not all the time, and don't show them too much. Drama queen, cry baby, oh, you're so annoying. We all have lots of emotions, and we all experience them differently, at different levels. Some of us cry when we're happy, some of us cry when we're sad, some of us just cry. I fall into that category. Some people don't feel at all. Some people feel it so intensely. I once had a teacher tell me to be less emotional because I cried in her class. But being a teenager is hard enough without having to monitor your emotions. Why are we telling people not to cry? Cry if you want to. It's hard enough to control your emotions when they're so intense you don't know what you're feeling. You're happy, but you feel frustrated, you're angry, you're sad, you're everything at once. Be yourself, but don't be weird. We've all been given this advice. The first day of school, be yourself. The first day of a new job, be yourself. That big presentation, you should be yourself. This morning, just go out there and be yourself. But what if I'm weird? What if I'm too much or too different? Or I don't know who I am? Growing up, my dad's nickname for me was Wednesday, after Wednesday Addams. Might have been because I wore a lot of black, but I was also a bit quirky, a bit sarcastic, not at the best of times, and I once won a head teacher's award for making a replica French Revolution guillotine out of paper that I used to recreate the trial of Marie Antoinette with my Rapunzel Barbie until my dad glued her head on. So you should be yourself, but I didn't know who I was because I was two different people. At home, I was the girl who was loud, sarcastic, quirky with the superglued Barbie. And at school, I was quiet, reserved, nervous. And neither one seemed quite like me. Trying to keep up with all of this was exhausting. Social cues are exhausting. Life is exhausting. And when I was 15, I turned around to my mum and said, I can't do it anymore. I didn't know what I couldn't do, and I couldn't explain why I couldn't do it. But I stopped attending my lessons in school, which went down about as well as you'd expect. And I really faced the prospect of leaving with no GCSEs. I went from straight A's to E's in a matter of months. And at parents' evening, one teacher turned around and told me I was going to fail. If it hadn't been for the likes of my biology teacher, my English teacher, my IT teacher, and the deputy head standing behind me and picking me up and chucking me into lessons, I'd never have got here today. But that difference felt like an ocean. Why could everyone else sit in a classroom and I couldn't? What was so different about me compared to them? I'd been doing everything right. I made eye contact, I was social, I had friends, I was flexible, I talked. But in reality, I'd lost friends. I gave up dance and music, and I stopped leaving my bedroom. The answer to why I felt so different came when I was 24. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I'm not an alien, as it turns out. I'm one of 700,000 autistic people in the UK. And I've heard late diagnosis described in many ways. For some people, it's like getting an instruction manual. For me, it's like having all the answers. I had the answer as to why I felt overwhelmed in classrooms, why I didn't like to talk to people, why I struggled to keep up with friends, and why life just seemed to be that much harder for me. The more research I did, the more I found that these are typical struggles of other autistic women and girls. So I wasn't alone, even though I felt like I was. Whenever I thought of autism, though, I thought of boys. I didn't think that autism could look like me at 24 in the first year of a PhD, having done an undergraduate degree and a master's. I'd spent my life trying to fit in. I'd tried to be neurotypical for so long that I'd forgot what was actually behind that mask that I'd been putting up. Because masking makes autism harder to spot. It means I can walk into a room and make conversation and have a good time and then go home and go to bed for a week because I'm so exhausted. And every time I took off a layer of my mask, there'd be another one underneath that I had to work through. And I'm still working through them today. I was a jumble of what I thought I should be, what society expected me to be, but none of it was actually me. I'd based myself on other people. Being told I'm autistic gave me the confidence and the power to own my identity and to own my difference. I spent the past 2 years working out who I am, and it turns out I am different, but not as different as I thought. I see and interact with the world in a different way. And that's a brilliant thing, because if we all saw the world in the same way, it'd be a really boring place. I realise now how I fit together. I'm highly sensitive. I thrive in a routine. I'm confident when I know what I'm doing. And I don't really mind public speaking that much. But also, I really like dancing, and I'll dance down the aisles in Tesco. I sing songs from Calendar Girls in the kitchen at the top of my lungs, and nobody cares, because I'm just being myself. Being diagnosed in your 20s means doing a lot of unmasking, a lot of undoing. And I've not finished building who I am yet. I'm still moving bits around, finding out what fits where. But this time, it's not anybody else. It's not anybody else's parts, they're just mine. Autism is still misdiagnosed in women and girls, and women and girls often are diagnosed much later than our male counterparts. But everybody deserves a chance to know their authentic self, to know that they don't have to fit a mold to be accepted, because there's power in owning your own neurodivergent identity, and there's nothing more unstoppable than just being able to be yourself. Thank you.